All right, I think we are ready. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, kick things off here. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending tonight. This is Alexandria Housing Development Corporation's meeting to provide information about our plan update for our proposed development at Mount Vernon and Glebe. My name is Kayla Hornberg. I'm the Vice President of Community Relations. I'm just going to get in here right at the start, kind of explain how to access information and all the resources we have for you here in Zoom. And then after that, Rob Grady is going to go ahead and explain more about the project, the DSUP plan amendment, the design updates. And then at the end, we will take questions from you in a variety of ways. You'll have to excuse me. I was just running up and down the stairs. So this meeting is being recorded. So if you are participating in this meeting, we just want you to know that it will be recorded and redistributed on our website. Live captions will be running. They're only available in English. We do our best to provide a transcript after our meetings. We post it online. This can take a few days to create, so we appreciate your patience. We do have live Spanish translation available, so you can access this in Zoom. It may look different in your browser, but as you can see on the screen here, there is a tiny globe that shows you all the different language channels that are available to you. You can move over to one of these channels and access live Spanish translation there. If you have questions during this meeting, we will be answering them at the end of the meeting. You can either raise your hand to ask a question live with open mic, or you can use the Q&A box to write down your question, and we will get to it as the meeting progresses. We're going to wait till we get through the presentation to address questions. I will do a balance of questions that are asked live and a balance of questions that are asked in the Q&A box. In the event that you cannot stay, or in the event that we receive so many questions that we run out of time, please write down your question in the Q&A box and we will answer it and we will post it on our website after the fact. If you're unable to do this, you can also always send emailed questions to us at communications@housingalexandria.org. Again, that's communications@housingalexandria.org. I don't think I have any more top of the meeting notes to take care of at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Rob, who will talk to you about our plan amendment for our Mount Vernon and Glebe proposal.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, everyone. I am Rob Grady, a real estate associate with AHDC. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an update on AHDC's proposed development between Glebe Road and Mount Vernon Avenue, an exciting and potentially transformative project we've been planning for the last 2 years. AHDC recently submitted an amendment to the development plan that was approved by the City Council in January of this year. This presentation will provide an overview of the changes to that project's design, changes we believe will substantially improve the development plan. As a quick refresher to the plan, AHDC is proposing a 500,000 square foot mixed-use development that will include 474 units of affordable housing, 38,000 square feet of community design spaces of underground parking, and substantial infrastructure and open space improvements. Our mission from the beginning has been to deliver a development that will bring needed resources, specifically affordable housing and access to amenities and services to Arlandria Chiralagua, while preserving and strengthening the assets that already exist within this unique community. After the project received development special use permit approval from City Council in January, AHDC was able to enter into an agreement to purchase the adjacent parcel, 3608 Mount Vernon Avenue, which is directly between the two buildings AHDC is planning to build. The main purpose of the DSUP amendment is to incorporate this additional parcel into the project's design. The incorporation of this additional parcel, it greatly improves the project's design, and it also provides an opportunity to address concerns expressed by the community during the DSUP approval process. Our following slides are going to provide visual overview of the changes. But first, I'd like to emphasize that these changes do not impact any of the unit affordability levels the AHDC has committed to in the plan approved by the city back in January. The DSUP amendment was submitted by the city on May 11th. Our goal is to bring the amendment before Planning Commission on June 23rd and City Council on July 5th. Our goal for the project timeline is to maintain the same overall development schedule with site work and construction of the garage beginning in the summer of 2023 and construction of both buildings beginning in 2024. Under this schedule, the first residential units would be ready for move-in by late 2025 or early 2026. I want to start off by showing our existing development site outlined in blue here. The pink highlighted portion this depicts 3608 Mount Vernon Avenue. This parcel is, as you can see, giving us a much more complete site. Here's an aerial view of the site where we can see the old Safeway building, the building which houses Huascaran Restaurant, and the parking lots, an additional lot which would be developed into our project. Here, the Chiralagua Hair Salon currently sits on 3608 Mount Vernon Avenue, and this will be folded into the greater development site. Depicted here is the former plan of the development with the proposed road that had connected the public alley, West Glebe Road, and Mount Vernon Avenue. We can see how the salon on 3608 is pushing the expanded public alley against building 2, and how the loading dock and garage entrance are kind of squeezed into the center of the formerly proposed road on this site plan. The new revised plan here, it creates a park where the upper portion of the proposed road was located, as well as a playground area, while also it creates a more spacious turn and connection for the expanded public alley. You can also see where there is the entrance and exit to the loading dock and garage closer to Mount Vernon Avenue. And this creates a safer pedestrian crossing also over the alley with broader sight lines of cars that would be coming through. Here we can see that comparison again, and you can see the lush green space and how that's really giving a nice buffer between us and our neighbors to the north, as well as the increased amount of turning area where the new expanded public alley meets Mount Vernon Avenue. So a few of the great benefits of this design revision, the major one I would say is that it is alleviating the concern about this becoming a traffic cut through on the previously proposed road. As I've shown, the new park with a multifunctional lawn space, as well as playground amenities, are coming into this development design. There's greater connectivity with the building's courtyard. The expanded public alley road is now centrally located within our two, Building 1 and Building 2, that are being proposed. This allows for more of a plaza-like seating area and improved streetscape between the two buildings. One benefit of folding in 3608 is that we can now have ground floor windows wrapping the corner from Mount Vernon Avenue along the expanded public alley, creating a much more inviting area. This addition of this parcel improves the flow between the buildings and the exterior spaces. And as I had mentioned before, it's bringing that vehicular traffic much closer to Mount Vernon Avenue. So this is our revised rendering. We can see how the expanded public alley is centered between the two buildings, ample open space with improved streetscape along both sides. And both building lobbies really have a stronger interaction now across the site, creating a much stronger neighborhood feel within the development. So this comparison slide is nice because we can see where previously the 3608 parcels building was there, and you had the road pushed up against building 2. Also being on the property line, we couldn't have any windows or anything like that on our residential lobby there on Mount Vernon Avenue. So it's just a much more comfortable approach to this development and a more gracious entrance for people coming into it. This view is looking south down the public alley with building 2 immediately on the left side of this. You can see that the height of the central opening in building 1 has expanded for more clearance and volume, and the outdoor staircase has increased in size for greater connectivity between the upper courtyard park and this lower area where we also have another adjacent park. So it's a much more activated, comfortable area with interaction on the site. And the next slide is going to show you a good comparison of where we are coming from. So here we can see how the existing garage and loading dock location within the formerly somewhat crowded design has now transformed into a more pedestrian-friendly and welcoming experience within the development. In this perspective here, we can see the spacious opening between the two buildings, as well as the sort of plaza-like seating area, which our very talented landscape designers are working on to create a nice pedestrian feel once approaching the development. In this previous plan, you can see how the former road had the loading docks and the garage entrance in the center of the development for where it was a little crowded. But also the road is very much pushed up against our neighbors to the north. In the revised design here, we've removed that upper portion of the road and replaced it with a park. The goal is that this will be a sort of multifunctional, multi-use area that can be, will have a playground section, but a lot of flexibility in how it can be used. And it'll work to support the courtyard park within. So a lot more interaction and more to give to the neighborhood in terms of outdoor space. So here in this old design, we can see where we couldn't have the windows against the property line. And we see how the road is sort of pushed up on one side, and it's a lot tighter as you're entering this portion of the development. And here in the last rendering, it really depicts the new windows along building 1. And we've got the building 1 right there has the garage and the loading docks much closer to Mount Vernon, much more space for turn radius, much easier to get in and out of on the site. And also you can see what a large buffer the new park area in green does for separating from our northern neighbors on that, giving more space between our buildings. This concludes our overview of the amendment to the plan. On behalf of AHDC, I want to express our appreciation for all the feedback we have received during these public meetings and during Planning Commission and City Council hearings earlier this year. We believe this feedback from the community has actually resulted in a really much better project. So thank you again, and we'd love to take any questions you have on this revised design.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to go ahead and just review how we can take questions and kind of just points of order for the meeting while folks are getting them in. So you can submit questions by hitting the Q&A button on your screen. You can type in your questions there and we will either answer them live, or if it's a very easy question, we might just type an answer into the box as well. You can also ask a question by hitting the raise your hand button. This will allow you to ask your question out loud to any of the panelists and the attendees as well. And just to let you know who's on the call, in addition to Rob and myself, we have John Frederick, the president and CEO of AHDC. We have Aaron Remolona, the Vice President of Development and Acquisitions with AHDC. We have Stephen Karcha from APM, who is working with AHDC on this project. And we have Duncan Blair, who is our land use attorney for this project. Any of these folks can answer your questions.
Kayla, can I add one thing to the presentation?
Sure.
I think it's important to note out that notwithstanding the fact that the road is changing to a park, all of the road, all of the park will have public access easements on it. So they're fully open to the public. The lower road is composed of the existing alley, and we are widening that with another public access easement. So while there's not vehicular travel up and down the road, we think it's safer. It is going to be used by the public and enjoyed by the public as a park. And that has not changed since our last, as part of this modification.
Thank you, Duncan. I'm going to go for our first question here. Where did you move the loading docks? So I'll leave this up for anybody who wants to answer. I also, just before we get there, I have a question. Please put the names of the people presenting on the screen so we know how to spell them. Let me see if I can pin our videos, which I believe have our names, but if not, I will get them typed into the chat for you. But the question was, where did you move the loading docks?
So the loading dock entrance is located at this location here, and the garage entrance is located here. Formerly, they were at the corner of the building. So they're located much closer to Mount Vernon Avenue.
And then the loading dock for building 2 remains in the same place.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from the Q&A. Can people walk or bicycle through the park where the road was removed from the previous plan?
Yes, there is a path that goes along building 1 and will connect down to the lower area where the expanded public alley is.
And this walk is handicap accessible.
Okay. I'm not entirely certain what the error is with names on the screen, so I have typed the names in the chat. But if you are unsure, if you type your question in, I'll try to help direct it to the appropriate person. This is a question from the chat. What are the requirements to be able to apply to this development?
I can take that. Thank you for your question, John Frederick with AHDC. This is an affordable housing development project that will have affordability ranging from 40% of the area median income up to 80% of the area median income. The affordability has not changed, as Rob mentioned, as we previous adopted plan. In order to apply, you have to go through a process to verify your income to make sure that you're within those income ranges. One of the things that we are working very closely on with the city of Alexandria as part of this plan, but also as part of the Alexandria Chiralagua small area plan, is what we're calling our Rent Ready program, which will be a comprehensive program that will run, is starting already, and we're getting ready to be on site in various parts of the Alexandria Chiralagua neighborhood from the start of construction through lease up to make sure that residents of the neighborhood are preparing themselves for how to rent in a low-income housing tax credit project. So more to come on that, but it does require income verification.
Thanks, John. And this is something too that with every project, I believe you mentioned it, but every project ahead of it opening, we put out information about the requirements that are up to date, that are reflecting the appropriate year, and we make staff members available to answer questions as well. So we will be sure to provide as much of that information as we can when it is available. I have a question from the Q&A. I'm still unclear about where residents are going to park. I live on a nearby street and we already have an abundance of overflow illegally parked cars. I'm also wondering if any of you have driven or walked through Chiralagua recently to realize how dense it already is. I have no problem providing housing for those in need. I just have a hard time. And I believe the question may have cut off, but.
There are 379 spaces of parking underneath 2 levels of this building, in addition to some street parking on the expanded public alley.
The person said,
Rob, I think it's also important to note that with a modification of the plan, the garage became more efficient. And the number of spaces that were in the garage when it was approved in January have been maintained. And there's no change to the garage parking as the project has been approved. And at the city council hearing during the approval and in prior presentations, we've demonstrated that the amount of parking for the project is consistent with the needs of AHDC's experience for residential parking.
Thank you. The question asker followed up, and I think they may have added another one here, but the question revolves around, is there any analysis of traffic impacts, such as at the intersection of Mount Vernon and Glebe, with all the parking traffic access from Mount Vernon Road and no longer from West Glebe Road? The traffic has been terrible, and I don't know how we're going to manage this many more residents without adding more lanes or widening streets. These both say from anonymous attendee. I believe they're from the same person, but which is why I try to blend them into the same question.
So I can start and maybe others can weigh in. So the question was, has a traffic analysis been done? And so yes, we had a traffic analysis done with the original approved plan, and we had that traffic analysis updated as part of the modified plan that we have submitted to the city, and analyzed the intersections that have been noted in the question, and we have found no adverse impacts on that as compared to what was the original plan. I will say that the plan for this area that was approved, the Alexandria Chiralagua small area plan, does request or propose increasing density, but at the same time, increasing walkability, increasing alternate modes of transportation to make the neighborhood a much more a walkable neighborhood. And it's not uncommon as neighborhoods redevelop to become more dense, but at the same time, reduce actual number of trips and the experience along the roadway. I will also note that we are abundantly aware of the issues that have occurred on Mount Vernon Avenue and some of the fatalities that have occurred with pedestrians. And just recently, the city of Alexandria released an Upper Mount Vernon complete streets guide, not approved yet, but has a number of recommendations on how to improve intersections along this stretch of Mount Vernon, including the Mount Vernon and Glebe intersection. So it is all part of this plan or our development is one piece of a larger community-wide planning process that has been approved by City Council that will increase density, will increase affordability, but also increase the livability and the pedestrian experience, walkability of the neighborhood.
John, just to add to that, maybe Carson can give us the dates, but as to the implementation of the traffic improvements that John referenced, I believe there is a meeting scheduled to go over those, a community meeting with the Alexandria Lagua implementation in the very near future. And that is focusing on those improvements, pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular improvements.
And as part of our, I don't know if anybody from the city wants to weigh in on this meeting, but as part of our, where we publish these slides and publish information on this, we will also put a link to that planning process so that folks can make sure they get there if they can't get to it from the city website.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to from the city wants to answer, if we've named you and you're here and you want to chime in, please hit the raise your hand button and I can give you permission to talk. Just the same as if anybody would like to ask a question out loud with their voice, if you hit the raise your hand button, I will cue you to ask your question. I have a few more in the Q&A box. What is the requirement to buy the property?
Yeah, I saw that question in the chat, and I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question. So if the commenter wants to clarify, I will try to elaborate. But it's not a requirement to buy the property, the new property 3608 that Rob referenced. It was something that we had hopes of doing, even talked about during the original approval process, and were able to get site control through a purchase and sale contract with that owner that has allowed us to make these amendments to the plan.
And if that wasn't your question, if that question asker would follow up, we'll be happy to double back to that as well. This question asks, does the new design provide any off-street space for people or delivery drop-off such as Uber and taxis?
Currently, we have an area in front of building 2 that we're looking at potentially loading and unloading zone for the uses in the commercial spaces, and that could likely work double duty.
All right, thank you, Rob. From the Q&A, adding parking encourages more driving in crowded streets. Given that this is one of Dash's high-frequency transit lines, could we reduce parking and add more housing?
I'll speak to that. Our current parking count meets the city of Alexandria's requirements, taking in all the consideration, parking standards, reductions, et cetera. We have attempted to we have done a shared parking analysis to make sure that we are minimizing, not over parking the situation. But right now, from our standpoint, we think the property is parked appropriately for the number of residents and the number of units in the commercial space. I understand in urban areas there is always a push-pull between how much parking, and those questions will continue. But as probably we've heard in this meeting, there's some that think that there's not enough parking, and now we're hearing a comment that there's maybe too much parking. We think that we're right in the right zone.
I'd like to also add that improvements around the property, we have a new bus stop along it, as well as bike share station. So this is a very multimodal new space around the development.
Kayla?
Mhm.
There is a question in the chat about affordability. I wanted to highlight for our team. I don't know if there's somebody that can really break down that.
Yeah, John, this is Aaron. I looked it up. I can provide that.
Okay, yeah, if you go ahead and do that, I'm tracking questions as they come in. Aaron, if you're ready to do that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you just for my own record.
Sure. Yeah. So it's, the question is asking for the breakdown, 40 to 80% AMI units. So for the rental, the multifamily units in building 1, of which there are 474 units, which I will note that is one less unit than what was originally in the plan approved in January. Because of the redesign we did lose one unit, which was designated as an 80% unit. The full breakdown is 25% of these units at 40% AMI, about 10% of the units at 50% AMI, 40% of the units at 60% AMI, and then the remaining 25% of the units are at 80% AMI. Although we do think potentially the number of 80% units is going to come down in terms of the percentage. So we've had a slide in the past that shows this breakdown, and we can provide that as a follow-up to the presentation. The other thing to note is the home ownership units, which those are targeting 80% AMI and below.
Aaron, how many homeownership units?
57. 58. Thank you.
And just to clarify, the number of units in building 1 is 416.
Yeah, thank you.
And I've put those numbers in the chat. We will, after the meeting and the slides that we add, and make sure that we put on our website, the information will be there, in addition to making sure that our website is updated with these numbers as well. A question from the Q&A. Are there still plans for a pedestrian traffic light at the end of the proposed new green space to allow for safer crossing of West Glebe?
Well, I can answer that. As part of the original conditions of the approved plan, we were required to do a study and a plan for a traffic light, of which the city was going to install as part of their any complete streets process or project that they would do. With the amendment of the plan, we are not seeking to amend that condition, although the city may look to have that plan somewhere else as part of the analysis. But as of right now, there's no intent on our part to amend that condition.
All right. And the next question in the Q&A. Can you explain the issues involved in the legal dispute between the Arlington Diocese and AHDC? What is the alley in dispute and what are the access issues?
I will be glad to explain that. Rob, could you put on the slide showing the existing approval? All right. As the question relates to, there's been a suit that was prepared, filed in the circuit court, has not been served, naming the city as a defendant and indicating that AHDC is an interested party. The suit involves the authority of the city of Alexandria to vacate 2 areas. If you could cursor there, that was part of a 1921 public alley. And then as it turns a corner and goes parallel, that is a 20-foot alley, again, dedicated as a public access easement as part of the 1921 subdivision of the property. The part of our original approval was to vacate a portion of that alley and to convert it into privately owned, but subject to a public access easement. When the suit was filed and looking at the pleadings ably filed, we were able to address all the situations which required the alley to be vacated, and that alley is no longer necessary to be vacated. Notwithstanding that legal principle, the access to the church, use of the alley by the church, use of the alley by the other owners on Mount Vernon Avenue may have been closed for a brief period of time for some construction, but it was never to impinge, limit, or otherwise impact the diocese and the school's access and use of that alley. As part of the project, AHDC, probably for the first time in history, will actually make some improvements to that alley to make it passable and will be a much better transit way as the alley abuts the project.
All right, thank you, Duncan. I have a question in the chat, and I'm translating this on the spot, so my apologies. When you say that these are for low-income folks, and for those who qualify, those who are able to get access to this have support, and the Latino community here is left outside of this income range.
That's the end of the question, Kayla?
It is, yes, sorry.
That's okay. So I'll answer that. We have worked very hard with members of the community to add or include a substantial number of units at 40% of the area median income. By my as far as I know, it's more 40% units than any project in the city has ever done. We do that because of this exact issue, that we know that this is an area of significant need for the residents in the community. In addition to that, we have worked very hard on the design of the units. Our design team, our project managers, and Aaron, as our vice president of development, have worked really hard on the design of the units to include as many 1-bedroom and dens, 2-bedroom and dens, to further drive down some of that price point. So while I would never sit here and say that it is going to solve all of the affordable housing issues and the deeply affordable housing issues in Arlandria, Chiralagua, or in the city as a whole, we think it takes substantial steps of adding a significant source of deeply affordable and standard affordable housing for this neighborhood. And we're proud to say that we have worked with groups like Casa Chiralagua, Tenant Workers United, as we have as we have worked on this project. And there's still work to do. I've mentioned the Rent Ready program. There's a number of obstacles that we need to come over to make sure that we're serving the residents of this community that live in this community now. And it's something that we're deeply committed to do.
Okay, at this time, I have no questions remaining in the Q&A. I have no questions in the chat, and I don't have any hands raised. Except Duncan, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I think we can end by, we talked about the dates of the hearings. I think it's important to understand that what is being requested is an amendment to the CDD concept plan. And a CDD concept plan is a broad roadmap of what will happen in the entire CDD area. And that includes our neighbors to the south, their 2 properties, and a small sliver of the church properties. We've reached out to them to see if they want to be part of kind of how their plan could work with our plan. And at this point, no one has indicated a desire to work with that plan, and we're continuing to offer. As to the DSUP, really the modifications are what we've gone over today, and those prior approvals have been voted on by City Council, and we look for a conversation on the various amendments. But again, we have diligently and in writing tried to get our neighbors engaged in the CDD process.
Okay, I think we'll just wait a few moments to see if there are any questions that are coming in via our other channels. I've left a note in the chat. If you have questions, please put them in the chat or the question and answer box. I'll take a moment to say if you come up with questions later, or somebody has questions that you did not get a chance to ask, you can always email them to us at communications@housingalexandria.org. You can also visit our website at housingalexandria.org/Arlandria, ARLANDRIA. And there's a message box there where you can submit your questions. You can also submit them through our general contact form on our website. If you received an email notification about this meeting earlier today, you can also reply in that email notification with your questions as well. We will make sure that any questions that are submitted in the next day or two get added to the Q&A for this meeting, but we will always take your questions at any time. Any other comments from the AHDC team, from staff, or from Stephen or Duncan?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Appreciate your time.
Okay, I think we'll wait just a minute longer. I also just wanted to highlight that if you go to our website and you view the project information page for this development, you will find all of our previous meetings, links to the videos, links to the slides that were presented at previous update meetings. This will be added to that as soon as we are able. Typically, we're able to upload the video quite quickly. However, the transcript can take a little bit more time, so we do appreciate your patience. I don't know if you've been able to see the automated transcript here, but it's not always perfect, so we can't simply take that and turn it into the transcript that we upload. So when that is available, we will also send an email to everybody who pre-registered for this meeting. If you would like to receive updates about this project, you can also sign up for a general interest list, well, an Arlandria specific interest list. If you go to our website, housingalexandria.org/Arlandria, at the top, if you navigate to upcoming properties, You will also find the link to the project information page there. You can also subscribe to our AHDC general information list. We send out a newsletter once a month with updated information about all things AHDC. We will also include updated information about this project in that space as well. Again, any questions, please email us at communications@housingalexandria.org. You can reach out to us via any of those email message boxes, any of those portals. It is typically me on the other end of all of them, so I will make sure that your question is received and answered by the appropriate team member. But I think at this time, I see no more questions. Oh, there are a few in the chat. So there was a question, are there 416 or 460 units in building 1? And Aaron answered this, but it's 416, 416. And this question says, just says, I need to know if there's any opportunity for my family. I'm not sure specifically what this question is in reference to. However, if you would like to send that question in to communications@housingalexandria.org, send it in via our website as well, or via any, if you'd like to call. This question was written in Spanish. I speak Spanish, several of our staff members do, so we'd be happy to speak with you and make sure that you are connected to the right person who can help answer your question. Ahead of this development coming online, we do anticipate, as has been mentioned, a program called Rent Ready. This is where we'll be working to make sure that we explain the lease up process. We try to identify hurdles in the leasing process and make it as easy to understand as possible, and equip everybody who would like to live in this community and all AHDC communities with the information and the resources they need to be successful. Not only will we do this for this community, but we see Rent Ready as an opportunity across our entire portfolio, and frankly, with anybody who's looking for affordable housing in the region, to learn more about the process, learn what it takes, learn what the low-income housing tax credit program is, why there are certain screening requirements that are involved. So we think that this will be a great resource. If you're interested in Rent Ready, please do sign up on one of our email lists, reach out to us and let us know you're interested. And we will make sure that you are kept in the loop when that project comes online. One question from the chat. What will a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment cost? I believe Aaron or Rob could answer this in more detail. At this moment in time, this development is about 4 years away from coming online. So we can't predict how rent will move in the next 4 years. Rents for this project will be subject to the Department of Housing and Urban Development guidelines for what fair market rent is in a given area. They adjust that number every year. But when we are getting ready to lease up this building, we will be sure to provide as much information as possible about what costs will be for both the rental units and the homeownership units as well. We can't predict where the next few years will take us. If I could have predicted the last 2 years, I certainly would have tried. But we will make sure that when we have the most accurate information possible, that we share that widely.
Actually, I might punt to John. John might know maybe just what a current 2-bedroom unit rent is. If not, we can follow. If not, I can follow up.
Let's follow up only because we have a bunch of different incomes here, and so to say what a current 2-bedroom is at 40%, I think it's about $1,200, but we will follow up with specific information.
Yeah, we can provide those for a nearby development for AHDC, but our leasing team would always say that it depends on every building, what the rent costs are. So we'll provide the 2022 information for the most, the closest property to this development, which I believe is the Bloom. But those numbers have just updated for this new year of Department of Housing and Urban Development data. So we will make sure that we get those adjusted and put out there as well. Okay, I see no more questions rolling in. So at this time, I think I'll go ahead and give everybody about 40 minutes of their evening back. As always, if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us via any of the aforementioned channels. We'd be happy to answer your questions and share information more broadly with the greater community. All right, thank you so much. We appreciate your attendance and your commitment to our community. I hope you all have a good night.